Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador, Excellencies, honorable guests, distinguished representatives, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank you all for attending today's side event, and I am honored to join you virtually on institutional and societal methods for fighting corruption. Also, I want to extend my special thanks to the Republic of Finland and UNAMA for co-organizing this conference, and thanks to Swiss Federation for hosting the event. Also, my special appreciation to Lord Ahmed, and also to Her Excellency Yuta Orblevin, Commissioner for International Partnership, European Commission. I want to thank you, Ambassador, again, and also I want to thank the resident coordinator for Afghanistan for their opening remarks. I am pleased to share with you what we do in Afghanistan today to minimize engagement and involvement of individuals occupying public office in corruption and malign practices. I'm not sure we can eradicate corruption during my tenure in office. That's why I use the word minimize, and we have to be able to measure that minimization. Much has been said, written, and researched on corruption in Afghanistan. There exists plenty of literature, strategies, and study papers. Corruption is an infamous headline in my country. I therefore wouldn't repeat the obvious and thus go straight into explaining our day-to-day anti-corruption initiatives and actions. Because we often hear that the donors are fatigued of lectures and theoretical presentations. One, to create a business-friendly environment. We have started a series of face-to-face consultations with major businessmen and investors in Afghanistan from 5 business zones of the country. We have held these numerous meetings. In each meeting, up to 60 members of the business community have attended. On one side of the table sit the business owners, and on the other side, representatives of all the relevant government institutions. These meetings are co-hosted by the Afghan Chamber of Commerce. In an environment of trust and confidence, the business community directly expresses their grievances. They name the corrupt officials, identify bottlenecks, complain on illegal bureaucratic practices, ills of the police, and unnecessary paper trails that force them to pay bribes. We list all these issues, send it to the relevant ministries, and demand action and correction. The business community in Kabul used to request meetings almost every week with us in order to register their complaints and grievances. It has been many weeks they haven't approached us. That means our approach has been effective. His Excellency President Ghani's vision of market building is one of the 3 pillars of stability in Afghanistan, which starts from the smallest steps. Several persons in positions of power who have been involved in corruption were arrested, put under investigation, or removed from their positions when we provided hard evidence. I could go into more examples and details, but due to time constraint from each sector, I would suffice by giving one example. 2, paralleling with society and mobilizing the communities to combat corruption. For the first time, communities have helped us identify those who have illegally grabbed and occupied public land. Or, for the first time, we have created a system which respects the voice of the communities in this regard. A few of these land grabs grabbers have agreed to pay the price of land while the rest have been notified to do so. This is being done through Crime Division at the Ministry of Interior and the Attorney General. Instead of just talking about land grab, we have published a long list of the land grabbers. Name and shame campaign is a key component in this approach. In a matter of a week, a known former official was forced to evict a piece of land at posh area in Kabul, worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. This program is part of Afghanistan's security charter. Land grabbers are part of a ring and organized cell who use weapons, government connections, and pay bribe to grab big chunks of land and then sell it illegally to small buyers, depriving the Afghan government of precious resources. We have by now created an index of all such ringleaders in all major provinces of Afghanistan. You shouldn't be surprised as these days some of them come out publicly and stand against the government's anti-corruption drive. 3, addressing grievances of our economically vulnerable families is our priority. Majority of the Afghan elite, people with wealth and power, don't trust the healthcare system. It's a dichotomy. The very same people who do not trust our health system are responsible for keeping the health system weak. We have started to identify drugstores and drug importers who have violated the laws and have brought substandard medicine to the country. In Kabul alone, over 60 such drug importers and drugstores have been identified and notified to correct or close down recently. As I said, I could go on and give examples, but I will, from each sector, I will just give one example. Also, we have taken the allegations of corruption in COVID funds extremely serious, extremely serious. However, much of what was propagated proved wrong, and we haven't been able to gain hard evidence against officials involved in it. But our drive to keep the healthcare system affordable for the poor families won't stop here. People now report on misconduct of doctors at government hospitals. Authorities in Kabul and the provinces take such reports serious. Corruption happens, but there is no immunity anymore. 4, delinking the law enforcement from crime networks. With direct assistance from communities, neighborhood chiefs, and again, within the framework of the Afghanistan Security Charter, nearly 4,000 individuals who have been suspected of involvement in crimes in major cities throughout the country were identified. These criminals are suspected of having links with the lower ranks of the law enforcement agencies. This is a major anti-corruption and anti-crime drive in the country. We have practically started to delink the lower ranks of the police from criminals and thus make police stations much safer for the people to walk in and approach. The names of the fugitive criminals have been published, distributed to mosques, community centers, universities, and media. Today, each police station has a soft or hard version of the names of the criminals, and the MOI can ask specific questions from persons in charge of these police stations as to how many have been arrested, how many have been corrected, and how many are still missing and fugitive. On average, up to 10,000 messages are sent to our institutions per day in praise of this initiative, and people are sharing their own stories of abuse due to corruption and misconduct by authorities. These messages are analyzed on daily basis and disseminated for action to various departments and followed up the next day. 5, we are empowering whistleblowers and rewarding collaborators. Some dozens of officials at the Ministry of Finance, particularly those at Customs, in 8 dry ports of Afghanistan and at mobile inspection units are under investigation on allegations of corruption, embezzlement, and fraud. anti-corruption folders prepared with the assistance of whistleblowers, victims and frustrated citizens were passed on to Attorney General Office and other relevant departments to start parallel investigation. I'm very happy to tell you that copies of these folders were also passed on to our allies at the British Embassy who are assisting us technically to collect evidence against the corrupt. 6, going after baked names. Baked corruption starts when we begin the process of preparing the national budget. Institutions, individuals, and entities which have vested interest in the national budget try to manipulate and influence the process. Particularly members of the parliament exert tremendous influence. Unfortunately, at times they threaten the cabinet members either to cater their illegal demands or face de-seating them from office. The parliament's power to de-seat a minister has given them an outsized and unchecked influence. Of course, police and law enforcement institutions won't be able to mitigate corruption in that branch by themselves. This is sophisticated. I therefore believe the creation of the National Anti-Corruption Commission is the right instrument to investigate the engagement of certain members of parliament in corruption, land grab, fraud, and embezzlement. Corruption by certain members of the parliament is vague, very vague. To this date, unfortunately, Afghanistan has not been able to bring any members of the parliament to justice. This is a forgotten corner. To this date, ministers, generals, directors, and even politicians of high stature have been charged, but no member of the parliament has paid any price for their involvement in matters of corruption. We call on our international allies not to be fixated on executive branch alone. Help us to tackle other corners as well. We should end the atmosphere of impunity for anyone and everyone. 7, chasing the non-state corrupt should not be forgotten. My office just did a report on on-budget and off-budget expenditures. The Afghan government has no hold on over 60% of the money that is spent in the name of Afghanistan, inside Afghanistan. A project in Helmand, which was initiated with $300 was supervised and monitored with $4,500. I am not joking. That is how much sometimes NGOs spend on administrative costs. We're not having any meaningful coordination with the NGO community. They hide behind donors and seek impunity from donor institutions. Each and every time we ask them for accountability, they immediately create an alliance and accuse us of shrinking their environment and space. We are not shrinking their space and environment. We are simply asking for everyone to be accountable. NGO accountability isn't existing in Afghanistan. They are running a government of their own. I call on our allies to push the NGOs for becoming more accountable to the citizens of Afghanistan. There is no example of any NGO person behind the bars. All key NGO staff have luxury lives, but they are all above the law due to their connections and lobbying ability. If there were no time constraints, I would have gone into details and provided some concrete examples. Now, at the conclusion, there is need for a strong will at the highest government leadership level. That strong will is existing. We are determined. We consider ourselves accountable, and we see ourselves accountable to each dollar and euro that our allies give to us, and to each Afghani that the Afghan taxpayers give to their state. 2, there is need for laws and legal framework. We have it. There is need for further improvement, and the legal frameworks existing in Afghanistan are good enough. and we have to use them. We are working on further improvements. 3, there is need for political consensus. We don't have it. Each time we want to act decisively, we are warned by the international community to opt for political accommodation other than cleansing corruption. Some of the most corrupt are imposed on us in the name of political accommodation. Some of the known drug dealers were released in the name of peacemaking. Let us keep these bold examples in mind. 4, institutions are key. They are crucial. We have these institutions. However, violence and continued terror attacks in our cities has put us in the most difficult situation. We were not rewarded for our goodwill gesture of releasing over 6,000 Taliban. We were not rewarded sometimes using the same knife for skinning the goat and defending ourselves against a standing wolf. We have the same resources for doing multiple things at the same time. 5, the way forward. I'm a believer in doing things non-stop. Consistency matters. Our recent initiatives have created a new environment. And we would like to work closely with our partners and international allies in strengthening this environment of trust. Respecting thousands and thousands of the messages that the Afghan people send through various means of communications to Afghan institutions, reassuring them the next day that their grievances will be addressed, has indeed created a new environment, and we are very proud to have played a part in creation of that new environment. Very lastly, we heard you loud and clear. We have been hearing about the corruption from all donor agencies, and also there are very strong voices inside Afghanistan. The Afghan media is a very vibrant and proud party in anti-corruption drive, and we are working very closely with them. Let me once again reassure you that the accountability will be strengthened, answerability will be strengthened. A lot has been achieved, particularly in the Office of the Attorney General. The very fact that they were so meticulous, bringing so many terrorists to justice, and bringing so many drug dealers to justice, is a testimony of their strength. The APAPS, the Afghan Personnel Pay System, has actually reduced the number of the ghost employees to 0. The Afghan identity card system, electronic identity card system, has started to reduce the Afghan civilian employees to 0. It was with the assistance of this system that we detected up to 13,000 non-existent employees at the Ministry of Education. As I know there is a time constraint, I will not go into further details. I thank you all for your participation. I thank you for your contribution and staying on the side of Afghanistan. We are very aware of our obligations. We understand standing firm against corruption makes the peace process easier, and letting it loose makes it more difficult. So with that very solid promise that we will be firm and determined against corruption, I wish you all the best with the rest of the proceedings.